But I think the most embarrassing one of them all is in the consensus is Ignez Semmelweis. He was a medical pioneer persecuted for telling the truth. So what truth did he figure out? Hey guys, wash your hands after doing an autopsy. Something as basic as that. Because he figured out that the death rate in the hospital for birthing mothers, it was a lot higher in one wing than the other wing. He figured out, well, what's the difference? Well, in one wing, you got the nurses delivering babies, and on the other wing, you got doctors. What were the doctors doing before they delivered the babies? They were doing autopsies on the mothers who died the day before, and they went from the dissecting room to the birthing room without washing their hands. And it just seems so embarrassing that, and he had the data. This is 1847. He said, wash your hands, scrub your fingernails with chlorine. And yet he was rejected and ridiculed by those older contemporaries. He was going up against consensus, and thank God he did, but they never gave him the credit he deserved, even when he had the data. He was running a hospital and he had a 1% death rate for mothers. There was other hospitals, they had a 10 to 15% death rate. And yet they mocked him. They said it was time to stop the nonsense about chlorine hand wash. And it's very, very embarrassing for the medical profession and for the scientific profession. And it may be embarrassing today. What are we believing today that people look back at as embarrassing? And they even came up with the Semmelweis reflex. That's where long-held ideas can remain entrenched despite potent evidence to the contrary, and people can and do persecute those who challenge the consensus, even when the consensus is wrong. Even when it's wrong. And so the medical profession, they had a pretty embarrassing time back then. But again, I think they had a pretty embarrassing time lately, too. This is a book by Pierre Corey. It's called The War on Ivermectin. And in here he says that maybe 10% of the doctors he knows can think critically. The rest of them just want to follow procedures and guidelines and policies, even if it's not working. He said, and he said 10% was generous, but that's another talk for another time.